Hey guys, what's up? PBM or Polar Bear Michael here. Just gonna be talking about the round 2 PTS hotfixes and all the changes they're doing to the PTS and give my thoughts and criticism about the PTS. I probably played between matchmaking and customs and scrims, I've probably played close to 100 games, maybe a little less than that. Probably I don't know, somewhere between 70 and 100, but whatever. Basically just talking about all the changes, my thoughts on them, what I feel about the current state of Season 4, and I guess some more overall arguments and stuff that's been popping up on Twitter about some of the items you'll see here. But we can just start off with Conquest and the start timer. This just makes sense. There was 2 minutes basically before the game started, so now that time gets cut down by 30 seconds, which is good because you don't have to wait forever to start the game. So normal stuff. Jungle camps, they decreased the health scaling from 1.85 to 1.75, the multiplier. I don't know exactly what I wasn't sure the exact HP values beforehand, but basically it just makes jungle mobs easier to clear, which is good because junglers can actually be self-dependent, more so because of this change. And then the Elder Elementals, Baka can't just eat it at the start of the game, which is just basically a nerf to Baka, and it just brings him more in line with all the other jungle buffs, so pretty normal stuff, that's good. God balance, everybody was complaining about, where's the sidebar thing? There it is. Okay, I'm not going to use that because I'm a bot. Everybody was complaining about Herc and his 3 change and saying that mathematically he was healing for less. I know Divios was one of the strong advocates for reverting that change. I thought people were kind of overreacting about the Hercule change because just giving him prots is so strong, and it also plays around anti-heal more. One of the old problems Hercules had is that you could just get a weakening curse or brawlers or whatever else, and it was really hard for Hercules to dive your backline, which is what warriors need to do, especially soul lane warriors. They have to be able to go on the backline and take a lot of damage before they die. And Herc really wasn't able to do that whenever you would get anti-heal on him. So I thought the protections were kind of a nice benefit, but now they basically made it so that he has a portion of his old 3, which was he heals back damage that he took over the duration of his 3 being active, as well as he has the protections. I don't know the exact math on this, but I would guess that Herc is freaking nuts now, and that he's really, really, really tanky. I'll probably reserve that opinion fully for soul laners or people who play Herc a lot more, like Divios or whoever, to talk about it, but I would guess this is a pretty big change. Moving on to Janus, probably worth reading all of this text actually. I didn't want to show every god. Okay, whatever, screw it. Janus has remained largely unchanged for the last few years. He has been a popular pick to many players, but at all levels of non-competitive play he has struggled statistically, only becoming a strong pick, not constantly a first pick or ban at the absolute highest level of play. We have long since been okay with this, understanding he is a challenging god with a high skill ceiling. Recently his strength at the highest level, though, or through item and meta shifts, has become a little bit too strong to his previous standing, so we are changing through space and time to match our previous statement about the cooldown of global ultimate abilities or global mobility ultimates. Whatever, same thing. So basically, they are nerfing Janus. A lot of pro players were upset that Janus was too OP. This definitely helps. You have to build more CDR to be able to spam his ult, which investing into items is a nerf in nature because then, you can build less damage or do whatever else. You have less flexibility in your build if you want to actually get a low cooldown ultimate. At the same time, I don't know if I agree with all the text. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, so I'm not going to tell them that, oh yeah, your stats are wrong, Janus is nuts and casuals too. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I don't agree with the point that he hasn't always been a strong pick in competitive. I mean, ever since probably Season 2, he's been always a top 5 mage, at the very worst a top 5 mage. The difference is there are a lot of players who simply can't play the god, not to call people out, but Kiki, for example, even though he was a really good mid laner when AFK was dominant and he was just, that team was just going off in Season 2, a lot of other teams would play Janus, C9 would play whoever else, but Kiki never would because he just didn't like the god. And I feel like that can be misleading because at the last two worlds as well as the last two regionals, that god has been first picked or first banned by many top teams. Like, I think Energy, Sword, LG, C9, like whatever you want to call their previous iterations, like they've all had a super high value on this god for like 2 years. So I feel like he could have had more nerfs, but at least we get started with them, and we'll see how much this affects him. My guess is he'll still be really good competitively. Like 20 seconds on and all is a good start, but it's not the only thing that made him really good. Another thing I would look at is probably a nerf that I would have really liked to see to him in addition to this was I don't like the mechanic where every time you go through a portal, you gain movement speed from the portal, like for 4 seconds or 3 seconds or however long it is. I think it's 4. And you basically, the portal has the highest or the longest range of any escape, and in addition to that, you gain movement speed from it, so you can cover so much more ground, and he gives that benefit to his allies as well. I would just cut that from his kit, and it probably wouldn't affect his performance in casuals much at all. So I don't know, but at least there was a change, I guess. So still a good job. Like, I like all the changes so far. Susano, they just decreased the bonus damage from his ult. That was added on the first round of PTS, I believe. That was a new addition to his kit. Basically, the longer you charge his ult, the more bonus damage he gets. 100 bonus damage at level 5 was kind of nuts, so they just made it scale along with the rest of the damage in his ult. Pretty good consistency. I'm going to skip this one and come back to it. Feels bad, man, for Sunder. It just feels bad. It definitely was a little OP, so they decreased the debuff amount was how much, it was just like flat damage increased that they took, or, they just took 30% more damage, which is absolutely insane. So, good damage nerfs, and I like how they kind of, even though they took the damage down, they made it so that Sunder is still like appealing because it has a lower cooldown. So, that is nice. Relian Ritual, just some, I think it's just a bug fix, right? Fixed an issue where Ritual could be interrupted if the destination god was damaged or CC'd, now should only be interrupted if the god using Relian Ritual is CC'd. I'm not sure if that actually was a bug fix. At first, when I read that item, I thought it was that if the god you're TPing to gets CC'd, it's interrupted. I guess it makes sense this way too. That probably does make, that's basically teleport to god. And this definitely makes it a lot stronger. But, whatever. Wind Demon, they just reduced the power because they put attack speed on it last patch. So basically, just shifting the power level of the item a little bit now that hunters are basically picking it up every single build. Soul Eater, they decreased the passive. There has been a lot of videos of this item being nuts on like warriors like Erlang and Osiris, so hopefully that change brings the power level of that down. Kind of sad about this one, Talisman of the Relentless. The old item was, I believe, 50 magical protection, 200 health. I think it had crowd control reduction on it, like 20% or something. I believe that's what it was. And then the passive was you would get a stack every time you were hard CC'd, and once you reached 3 stacks, you were CC immune for 1 second, so it was kind of like a counterpart to Magi's. And they removed it from the game. Kind of sad, because I feel like I didn't get to test it that much, but that being said, the fact that I've played so many games on the PTS and I haven't tested it that much kind of speaks to like how viable I thought it was, or how situationally good it was, so I can kind of see that. That's fine. Having too many items in the game kind of oversaturates it for new players, so it makes sense. Rage decreased the cost from 2600 to 2200 and increased the duration of rage buff from 5 to 8 seconds, so the old rage is gone. The new one is whenever you get in a kill or an assist in a team fight, your critical strike chance is increased by, I believe, 20% per stack. And now that duration is 8 seconds. So it's kind of like a team fight snowball item for hunters. It's like cheap crit, and when you actually team fight with it, the crit gets stronger, so the item gets stronger. I still think it's a bad item because hunters normally want to build for like 6 item max damage, max DPS, not for kind of these risky like tempo builds or like quick builds that gets their items out quicker and like have huge risk and reward to them. So I'd expect the item to still be bad, but a buff is good that it isn't complete trash. War Flag, okay, this is a cool one. This was supposed to be the warrior support item. I like that they changed this. I still don't know if the item will be good, but now that it actually applies to your hunter, the movement speed and attack speed bonus from the item, maybe it could be good. If I remember correctly, it was only 1% of each, and it only lasted like 6 seconds or something. So you clear a wave, and each you and your ADC get 6% movement and attack speed. I still don't think that's good at all, but at least it's more appealing. It's definitely not complete trash. So if you have an aggressive dual lane, maybe you have like Erlang Shen with some really good early game hunter. I don't know, maybe even like an AMC or something. You can just run at people and auto attack them down. Maybe that'd be pretty cool. But at least it gives you more incentive to buy the item. So I'll be testing it out for sure. Fatalis removed penetration from the tier 2 of the item. The tier 2 was way too strong, so good change. Then a couple more price changes. They wanted to round out all the numbers in 50s or 100s, so that is a good change for consistency. Ethereal Staff was completely insane for mages. It does percent damage. It was doing percent true damage on no internal cooldown on mages. So if you were like Hebo or Thoth, it would apply on every single one of Thoth's one, and it would apply on all Hebo's abilities, which are obviously short cooldown. So you would just chunk people for percentages of their health in true damage that they couldn't mitigate outside of like a shell. So definitely good to tone down this item a little more. It now does magical damage instead of true damage, and they originally put the internal cooldown on 3 seconds. I guess it was still overperforming what they would like it to, so they bumped up the internal cooldown a lot. Pretty good change, more of a bruiser item. So it'd be like the hybrid version of Soul Reaver, like the hybrid offense-defense version of Soul Reaver, rather than just strictly better than Soul Reaver in every situation, which you never want an item like that. So another good change. Pretty much everything has been good so far. Heartseeker fixed an issue where the stacks were being consumed on minion hits. The effect should now only consume stacks when hitting a god. That makes the item better because now your passive isn't getting eaten while you're clearing camps. Silver Branch Bow, I like this change a lot. I said this in my original PTS notes review that because this is the magical equivalent of Ichva, or however you pronounce that, Ichva reduces their enemy power by 10 physical power, but you get magical power at a quicker rate than you get physical power, just in terms of numbers. So this isn't really a buff. It's more just like, I mean, it is a buff, but it more just like keeps the two items in line with how they should be scaled. So good change. Rangda's Mask, or however you say that, decrease the number of stacks required for the first buff from 8 stacks to 6 stacks. I actually was really hyped for this item at first. I thought it was going to be really good, but it's kind of just like a snowball item, and it's not a snowball item in the traditional sense. It's like, if you get this item and you start getting ahead, then you get a lot of really good cheap stats that can help you stay ahead, but the problem is it doesn't really help you get ahead, and if you were already ahead, then it's better to buy other items to progress into a like more late game build, because then you're just going to have a higher power level anyways. So I don't think the payout for buying this item is still where it should be. It's really, at least in a competitive point of view. In casuals and everything, I've had a ton of fun with this item, and it's been really good. I just don't think I would buy it in scrims or SPL or anything like that, but still a good change. Gladiator Shield decreased the physical power from 25 to 15, so the text has served as a strong bridge item, especially for warriors in the soul lane. We're lowering some of the physical power provided to this item to not only highlight this as a defensive bridge choice, but balance its overall strength. I think this was the item... I haven't played a lot of warriors, but I think this was the item that was healing people a ton if you used like abilities on gods. I don't know if that's correct. I'm not going to go that deep into it because I don't know much about it, but basically they nerfed it, whatever. Moving on. Sands of Time, I've seen a lot of mid players complain that they don't have enough mana to clear early now that they're on their own. So they needed more MP5, and the Soulstone MP5 was removed, so none of their starter items really gave them a good amount of early game mana sustain that they really need to clear waves and clear the jungle, so on. So basically just improved that benefit from Sands of Time. This is now basically your regen item, and this change also makes sense because Sands of Time gives 10% CDR, I believe. So if you're spamming your abilities more, you need to have the mana to back it up, so makes sense. I still don't think the MP5 is that strong on this item. I mean, you have to be missing 50% of your mana pool, and then you get, freaking 7.5 MP5. That's still not that much, but good change. Spectral Armor. Okay, so yesterday was the first day we scrimmed on PTS, and we played, like 3 or 4 games, whatever. And Spectral Armor was insane in every game. It was like impossible to dive their backline because your support or your soul lane or whoever has this item can just sit in front of the hunter, and if you hit them with this item, then they just fear your entire team, and it was on such a low cooldown. Team fights were so hard to play around, and it did feel like really, really strong. This change is good because now you can poke that effect off. A hunter can hit an auto attack on a tanky target, and now their passive is gone for the team fight. Whatever. I still think Spectral Armor is really strong for anyone who's watched my stream. I've bought it pretty much, like, I'd say over half the time. Like, in a full build, I probably would get it just about every game. It just feels so good. The 70 prot and 20% CCR are insane for the cheap price, and then a passive that hard CCs people in an area is kind of nuts. So I'd still like to see this item get nerfed a little bit more. Why can't I speak English? But good change overall. Pythagorean's Piece, now that they gave a aura benefit to physical gods as well, it makes sense to tone back the initial power of this item for whoever is buying it, the mage. So this is more of a utility item rather than just, hey, this is really good damage and it gives your teammates an aura, you should buy it every single game. Now, as I say, it's more towards it being a support choice, so really good change there. I also like that in conjunction with the Bancroft's talent change, it makes it so that Bancroft's is your more offensive choice and Pythags is your more utility choice, whereas previously Pythags was better at doing both. So, really good change. Spear of Desolation, they previously had no passive on this item. In Season 3, the passive was if you got a kill with this item, it would reset your cooldowns by like 8 seconds. Kind of a less extreme version of that is now a kill or assist gives you the proc, but now it's only 1 second. Still a big buff because it also gives 5 more pen for only 100 more gold, and obviously 5 pen for 100 gold is really, really cost efficient. So this item is definitely a lot better. I would expect a lot of people to play with this more and to test it a lot more, and I'm interested to see how it does. Stone of Gaia, so originally in the first iteration of PTS, this item was if you got hit by a knock up or knockback, you would immune the effect and be CC immune for 1 second. I think that's what it was. And in addition to that, once that proc had triggered, you would regen 10% of your health and 10% of your max health and mana over like 5 seconds or something. Now they just put the old regen passive on Gaia. Previously in Season 3, Gaia was basically never bought. Pretty much ever since this item went from having magical protection to going into the health tree, which was a Season 2 to Season 3 change, the item was severely underbought, but now that it has a good counter building purpose and it has the regen back on it, it might be a good item. I'm definitely going to test it a lot more, especially against gods like Sobek or Hercules and so on. And now that Hercules got buffed, you'll probably see this item a lot more to counter him if he ends up being really strong. Soulstone no longer provides mana when consuming stacks. This basically just makes Soulstone a very early game aggression item instead of just being really good to get a lot of clear out. And now if you choose to buy this item just for the sake of having really good clear, you're going to pay for it with your mana consumption, and kind of makes sense. And then Swiftwing, this was the item where if you left the fountain, you gained 40% movement speed for, I believe, 15 seconds coming out of base. Now if you hit people or you clear camps or whatever, you lose the effect, so you can't just zoom. Like, if there was a team fight at your own tier 2 tower, and you walked out of base with this item, you can't just zoom around in the team fight for the next 5 seconds, because that is kind of insane. And then, yeah, you just have some other to-do stuff. So, overall, I did skip one change, and we're going to go to that in a second, because that's a more long discussion, or more kind of a rant. But, overall, I think all of these changes are really, really good. I like all the item adjustments. I think my initial reaction is Spectral Armor. I'm trying to find it. Is it? Oh, here it is. Spectral Armor could use a bit more of a nerf. I would increase the price of this item, I think. I think anytime you have an item that not only gives you good defense and crowd control reduction, but also has a unique passive, you should be the item is cost efficient based on the merit of its defenses alone, and whenever you are also getting a unique passive off of that, especially one that hard crowd controls enemies, you should pay for that a little more. I think this item would even make sense if they bumped it up to like 22, 2300 gold. 2400 is probably too much, but I would just like to see some adjustment in that respect. I still view this as a really strong item. If you just think of all the interactions it has, your support, right? And a Thor is going to ult your entire team. It's actually good for you to stack for the Thor ult because Thor is going to land on you and you're going to fear the Thor away or anyone else who's trying to dive. And now you basically saved your teammates by getting 3-man Thor ulted. Like that's kind of a stretch, but you get the point. Or also, say you're a soul laner and you're against like Loki or something, and Loki ults you. He ults you and then is instantly feared away, and you get away, and you basically only take his ult damage. Interactions like that make this item really strong because it can basically counter entire god kits by itself. So you should definitely have to pay more for it. Is the point. So I'd like to see that get another nerf. In addition, I think all of this other stuff was good. I'd like to see War Flag actually get a little bit more love. I think. Where is it? If I can find it, it was definitely earlier on, right? Am I just blind? Here we go. War Flag. I would like to see this item. This is the Warrior Support starter item. I think I'd like to see the passive of this item get tweaked a little bit. I think the stats that it's giving is fine if you want to have it be an aggressive laning phase item. But the duration is just far too short for the item to be good. I think it's only 1% of each movement speed and attack speed and only lasts 6 seconds. And it does stack. If you want to do that, maybe it's better to have it last 10 or 20 seconds. So maybe you can clear a jungle camp and then go to a wave and clear the wave, and you can kind of get, 9 or 10% movement and attack speed, and then all of a sudden that is actually a really powerful item in lane to go for kills. Or the flip side of that would be just buff up the stats that you get per stack a little bit. I don't think the item is all that great right now, but I think it would be interesting to have an aggressive warrior support option be viable, because I'd say pretty much, with the exception of Erlang and Guan, who one of them had, Erlang had basically the best CC in his kit, which was a long-range root cripple, which is now gone, and Guan, which is a healer, which brings, value in itself. Outside of those two supports, there really haven't been any warrior supports that are extremely viable in the past year or two. I mean, Odin would see a couple games, Trickstank pulled out like Wukong a little bit here and there, but overall, I think it would be cool to have some more variety in the support role, and this item has potential to do that, but I think it needs a little bit more buffing to get to that point. And here we can go on the rants about all the other items. So, first off, this is more of the unpopular opinion that I have in the pro community. A lot of professional players would like to see mainly this part be completely reverted, and I just want to explain my point of view on that and why I don't agree with it. Personally, I feel like everybody that is playing the PTS right now and kind of testing it, I think a lot of pro players are looking at it as comparing it to what the previous seasons have been and how your farm would stack up and how all of that stuff would stack up compared to previous metas. And I feel like that's a bad way to look at it, because the whole point of all these changes are to completely alter the game so that it's not like something you've played before. So you kind of have to have more of an open mind. I don't like the idea of reverting a big change like this, because if you do that, the game is just going to continue being stale, and you're going to continue having the same viable strats and the same metas and all that same crap. It just won't be fun to play, and it won't be fun to watch either. So I like that the game is more unique. I think I tweeted out that if they are looking to tweak this, rather than a complete revert, maybe you look at something like only mid-harpies and fire elementals and the oracle harpies spawn at like 15 seconds or 10 seconds. So basically, you would fight over neutral camps. So if you decide that you want to go for an early game invade comp, you're going to have to do it in the middle of the map in front of people who are likely going to contest you, and all those camps are kind of, with the exception of mid-harpies, but those camps are kind of beefy and hard to kill, especially the oracle harpies. And it's really risky to go for that, because if they spawn at 15 seconds, for example, or even 20 seconds, like just half of the jungle at that time, then you would actually lose the full wave to go for that, which isn't worth at all. basically what I'm saying is I don't like the idea of reverting the change. Change is good. I actually, the more I've played PTS, the more I've grown to like it. The only thing I would say that I don't like, if they want to keep the game in this state where the jungle camps are spawning at 30 seconds, I would highly suggest reverting the minion wave XP change, because currently, if you were a mid laner and you solo the first wave, you don't hit level 2. It now gives, like, I think you need 330 experience to go from level 1 to level 2, and the first wave gives you like 308 experience, something like that. I mean, adding 22 experience onto a wave doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Just, put 7 experience, or I guess it would have to be 8 experience or whatever on every single melee creep, and boom, you're done. Uh, but it feels really awkward, especially in dual lane, to be able to. I think the most awkward thing I felt in the PTS, if you're in dual lane and you clear that first wave and you go to the enemy purple and you hog it, the fact that you're level 2 and they're only level 1 is just so punishing to the enemy dual lane. It makes it so that you basically have to draft really good early game clear, because if you're ever in a situation, say you're like Geb and Freya, right? If you're like Geb Freya versus Sylvanas and whatever else, Artemis, who cares? You can't you can't even contest your purple buff while it's being stolen, because the whole wave is under your tower. So not only are you losing gold from that wave, you're losing your purple buff. You're level 1, so you're going to continue to be snowballed on. And now the other dual lane is in a position where they get Oracle Harpies, they get both purple buffs, and maybe even they get your red buff. So you're just so far behind. And if you were able to hit level 2 earlier, then you're potentially in a position where you can actually fight them over your purple, even if they have HoG. Maybe you can poke them out or whatever. Basically, not being able to hit level 2 early prohibits you from being able to fight early, which kind of sucks. Also, I didn't mean to hit spacebar, but whatever. There's a lot of creativity that can be involved if you were to tweak this a little bit, but I wouldn't be unhappy if they completely left it, but I do think being open to maybe only having neutral camp spawn, or only or only the jungle buff spawning, or increasing the wave XP value, something like that could be really good for the game right now. And I don't know, just something to think about. As for HoG, so this is my main problem with the current PTS. Everybody says, or a lot of the game devs and casual players basically say that HoG is an item that is meant to be a tool for new junglers to learn how to jungle and be independent and not have to feel like you don't want new players to pick the jungle role and then get soloed by a jungle mob and just get completely farmed, because it won't be fun for them to play. So HoG is an item that is kind of a crutch for newer players to learn how to play Smite and to do it independently, because obviously in low level games you can't expect people to rotate around the map to help you clear. So they say it's a necessary tool for that, and I can see that. My problem with HoG is that every time HoG has been nerfed in the past, it basically immediately gets all these minor buffs until it just becomes so viable and competitive, where basically it starts a HoG meta. Like in Season 3, HoG was complete trash the entire year until we got to group stages, where they buffed the item to, I think they buffed the objective secure, and I think they gave it a stun, or whatever they did. Basically, they gave it the stun back, they buffed objective secure, and now it's better, and it was still good early game. And now you basically get to the point where it's an early game snowball item where if you have a HoG and you run up to their buffs, their only counterplay is to give up their buff or to kill you. And I mean, you don't even have to go up to their buff, right? You could do what Eager did at regionals and everything. You just watch them do their buffs and they can't do anything. And then you have your mid laner outclear their mid laner, and then you just outclear both waves. They even proxied at Worlds to do this. You just outclear, and then you walk to their buffs before they can. You just HoG it, and you're ahead for free, and you just start snowballing. And that's like, it's just the worst thing to play around. It just doesn't promote PvP counterplay, which is kind of what you want. It's all PvE counterplay, which is, if HoG is a viable strat, your options are lose every single early game no matter what, or you have to buy a HoG as well. So the only counterplay is, or the only like reliable counterplay that doesn't involve you just being behind off the start of the game, is to also buy HoG. So if the only counter to an item is to also have an item, that's just not a healthy game state for an item to bring into the game. And I just don't really like that at all. A lot of other pros have expressed that same sort of feeling, and I'm not even saying that HoG currently is that OP. It's more just the principle that if it's a viable snowball item, then it'll just be bought every single game. I think, let me find the Twitter conversation I had with somebody. I think it was with Brody Hales. Here, I can show this, I think. So, I had this conversation. I said, why are we buffing HoG? The item only serves a snowball and isn't fun to play with or against, blah blah blah, basically what I just said. And then Brody said, I think it'd be good if they had it in, that was his suggestion. He said, in my opinion, HoG should definitely be competitively viable, but in a much more niche way than it ever has been. The problem with that is there's no niche for snowball, which is what I say here. Like, either you can snowball an item, or you can't or either you can snowball a game with that item, or you can't. So, if the item isn't good enough to invade and take their entire jungle, then you're never going to buy it. And if it is good enough, you're going to buy it literally every single game. Both teams have to buy it to match it. Otherwise, you just get completely trashed in the first few minutes and you lose. And this is why I have a problem with them buffing the objective secure on it, which, even though the max damage it has is 300 to 500 damage on objectives, depending on your level, that still is good enough to secure. Like, basically that means only mage ultimates can really reliably take it. A HoG is still going to be, even early game, a 300 damage HoG at level 1 is still going to be a majority of the mage ultimate, so it still is really viable for objective secure. It's not like it's complete trash. So I just don't like the principle of it. And then he says, I guess I feel that there could be a point of balance when gods with bad clear can utilize it without it being auto-buy on all. And this point is what I really want to talk about, because that's basically what all the devs have said. I think Ponpon had said it earlier today on Twitter, is that the item is meant to be there to help junglers with bad clear be able to clear the jungle. But that'll never be a thing in competitive, because the whole, and this ties into the minion spawn thing, the whole thing that you're seeing people complain about with the jungle camps is that early game clear is just too OP in the game right now. But it's a MOBA, and clear is always so valuable, and this is why Golden Bow was bad for the game, is that if you give everybody the ability to have good clear, which is what HoG does just for the jungle, then you basically put the game in a state of permanent snowball, where whoever gets off to the best start will be able to just win the game if they play it cleanly, which is what happened at Worlds, and every single, even the players on Energy who won Worlds complained about the meta right after. I think Adapting was like, great tournament, but please remove HoG, or whatever he said, or please fix this meta. And just the mechanics of a MOBA make it so that clear will always be extremely viable. It doesn't matter if the jungle camp spawn at 0 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. It doesn't matter if it's all about wave clear or wave pressure. Just clear and pressure will always have such high value, because if you're clearing your jungle faster than they clear theirs, if there are 0 team fights in the entire game, whichever team is clearing their stuff quicker off cooldown eventually is just going to have a bigger lead. I mean, that just makes logical sense. So it'll always be valued, and that is why the argument of having bad clear jungles get HoG to help them is not viable, because you're going to pick the high clear jungles anyways. Like, this argument isn't, use Bastet for example. Bastet has horrible solo jungle clear with her, level 1 bleed or whatever. This argument isn't, oh, well, now a Bastet with HoG can keep up with an Awilix without HoG, because if you looked at any of the regional games that Eager played, they would pick Bastet, DJ would play Bastet, they would buy HoG, and it doesn't matter if the other 2v2, solo lane jungle 2v2 has better clear than them. All they have to do is walk up to their buffs, not die, and they can't do the buff in front of them because HoG is a better secure. Like, HoG is going to do more damage than any other ability at level 1, so you will always secure the buff over them. So it just puts it in a point where you're basically promoting invades to the point of each jungler has to buy HoG, and then it's good clear versus bad clear, but both have HoG, so now you get into the Worlds meta, where it's just a complete shit show of fighting at level 1. And even though it may be fun to watch, it's definitely not fun to play, and it just isn't a fun strat to play with. There's nothing fun about, oh, they won the level 1, now we lose the game. Like, especially when it doesn't even involve the whole map. The mid laner and the ADC weren't even involved in that meta. They were basically, spectators for a lot of it. So I don't know. It just doesn't. The argument doesn't make sense to me. I feel like the other thing I said about the item on Twitter, I was talking with Ataraxia and Hindu, and I was basically saying that if you look at every time HoG has been nerfed, it just comes into a pattern where it's nerfed, and then it gets buffed for casuals, and then it gets buffed again, and now all of a sudden it's viable and competitive, and once it's viable, it is just a complete HoG meta, and it's just complete AIDS. The argument of the item being there to help junglers with bad clear, there's just so many other better ways to do that. Like, this would also address the jungle camp problem. A lot of junglers, I think Mask especially, I've been talking to him a lot, and Weaken has also said this, is that you can't clear your own jungle at level 1. So it basically put junglers in this point where you still have to start in either mid lane or soul lane to get wave XP, because you can't even solo fire elementals or whatever else at level 1 without taking all of your health. So you still have to leech waves. You're not going to hit level 2 off the wave because they decreased that. And now you still can't clear your own jungle by yourself. If you want to help bad, or not bad players, if you want to help bad clear junglers or new jungle players learn how to jungle properly, all you have to do is make it so that they can actually solo buff camps at level 1 so that they can be self-dependent and they can completely be independent of everyone else on the map. They can clear whatever they want, and that fixes the problem much more than having one relic just completely... Where's the relic? That just seems like such a better solution than having this relic basically serve as a crutch to those players to teach them how to play the game. And as far as competitive goes, it has led to nothing but cheesy metas, for lack of a better term, and snowball. And that's just kind of my thoughts on it. I think that pretty much this entire patch was really good. All the changes make sense. I do really like that they are persistent on keeping the jungle camp spawning at 30 seconds. I do think there could be some tweaks here and there with it, but I do like the idea. I like everything about the feeling of PTS, but my current fear is that if they keep the game like that and they keep buffing HoG, you're going to have nothing more than a Season 1 meta, which was at Worlds, which was the support, the jungler, and the soul lane are all by HoG. You just clear the waves and then you HoG all their jungle camps because you're basically promoting a PvE meta, and there's going to be very little PvP involved, and there's just not going to be enough room for counterplay, and that's just my opinion, and that's all I got. So thanks for watching and listening, so on and so forth, and peace.